It's Friday, June 26th, 2009, and it's got to be 4:20 somewhere in the world. I'm your host, Radical Russ Belville. Produced and distributed by the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws in Washington, D.C., this is your NORML Daily Audio Stash, the growing truth about cannabis. Welcome to the most popular podcast regarding marijuana in all of America and all the world, featuring interviews with scientists, politicians, doctors, prohibition policy activists, regular cannabis consumers, musicians, and NORML staff and NORML's board of directors, along with music and comedy no other podcast can offer. You can always find out more about our show at our website, stash.normal.org, and continue the education and conversation on our blog as well. We're ending marijuana prohibition with education, one listener at a time. The podcasting and blogging technology for the NORML Daily Audio Stash is provided by Red Aphid Interactive Media. For your professional web design needs, visit redaphid.com. Good day, Stashers, and welcome to the podcast. I want to begin things today by giving a shout out to my mom and dad, and congratulations for their 43rd wedding anniversary today. I'm so happy for them. Love you, Mom. Love you, Dad. Also, I'm going to be taking off this weekend, so if you're sending in emails, you might not get them answered until Monday. I'm taking part in the 4th annual invitation-only Mountain High Camping Weekend in the shadows of Mount Hood up here in the Great Pacific Northwest. Yeah, it's me and a few dozen other guys. It's a males-only camping trip. I'm in charge of the music, which means I get to bring my big concert PA system and load it up with some rock. You know, as Herb would say, rock music. And we can have some good times out there around the fire, enjoying some of Oregon's finest homegrown, having a horseshoe tournament. We got all sorts of good things going on up there. It's always a great time. Also, we've got NORMLCon coming up here at the September 24th through 26th in San Francisco, California at the Grand Hyatt Hotel. The poster is up online at stash.normal.org, and yes, it is available for sale. $15 with shipping and handling, or $25 to get yourself an autographed copy from our executive director, Alan St. Pierre. So check that out at stash.normal.org. And register now for NORMLCon while the rates are low. You get early bird discounts if you register before August 1st. So check that out, stash.normal.org. And don't forget, we've got federal bills that are working to end marijuana prohibition one bit at a time that you need to contact your legislator about. There's the Industrial Hemp Farming Act, there's the Medical Marijuana Patient Protection Act, and of course the big one, the Act to End Penalties for Adult Marijuana Possession at the federal level. So check all three of them out at our NORML Take Action Center, which you can find through the big map at stash.normal.org that says Activists Alerts. Now, coming up on today's Daily Audio Stash, we begin with your hemp headlines. We take a look at Mendocino County and the sheriff there with a new voluntary zip tie program for medical marijuana plants. We get some news in the scientific realm about a study that shows THC may actually help schizophrenics. Not cause it, help schizophrenics. And another look at the Mexican drug war from El Paso, Texas, and how the cartels in Juarez are outgunning 10,000 federal troops down there, 10,000 Mexican feds. And my commentary on a fringe conspiracy theory that posits the idea that us at NORML secretly want marijuana to stay illegal so that we can have jobs. You get my take on that. This is the 4th Friday of the month, so our regularly scheduled Cultivator's Corner will be heard today with High Times Senior Cultivation Editor Danny Danko answering your questions about growing marijuana. In our Daily Toker Tunes, brought to you by MarijuanaMusicAwards.com, we hear more music from the American Marijuana Music Awards winners. And in our cannabis conversations, we finish up with part 2 of our interview with Huffington Post writer and the author of This Is Your Country on Drugs, Ryan Grimm, who talks a little bit more about American appetites for drugs throughout history. We're on the threshold of one of the best summers of our lifetimes, folks. We are making steady progress in ending adult marijuana prohibition. Now it's time for your NORML Daily Audio Stash.
Hello, I'm Paul Stanford from the Hemp and Cannabis Foundation, or THCF. Medical marijuana is legal in 13 states today, and THCF has clinics in 8 of those states. Our doctors help qualified patients obtain an authorization for medical marijuana in their state. Patients are eligible for medical marijuana with a history of either severe chronic pain and or nausea, cancer, AIDS or HIV, hepatitis, glaucoma, seizure disorders like epilepsy, chronic muscle spasms such as multiple sclerosis or asthma, neurodegenerative diseases such as Alzheimer's, and gastrointestinal disorders like IBS or Crohn's disease. If you or someone you know has one of these conditions, our doctors will help you obtain a permit for medical marijuana. THCF Medical Clinics has offices in Washington State, Oregon, California, Colorado, Hawaii, Nevada, Montana, and now Michigan. Call 1-800-723-0188 or go to the web at hemp.org or 1-800-723-0188.
Now it's time to take a look at the latest stories about marijuana from news organizations across America and around the world in our NORML Daily Audio Stash, Hemp Headlines. Mendocino County adopts voluntary $25 per plant zip tie fee.
Hey, well, those some mighty fine outdoor marijuana plants, Mr. Medical Marijuana Patient. Would be a shame if anything were to happen to them. Tell you what I'm gonna do. Me and my boys here can offer you the peace of mind of a little protection for your plants. For a fee, of course.
Ukiah Daily Journal. Sheriff Tom Allman's voluntary medical marijuana zip tie fee of $25 per plant was added to the master fee schedule by a unanimous vote of the Mendocino County Board of Supervisors on Tuesday. County Counsel Janine Nadel said the details of the change in county code were still being debated in committee, but that the board could adopt the fee separately. She said, quote, "In the meantime, since it didn't appear we were going to have the ordinance resolved before July, we decided to bring the zip ties into the master fee process so that zip ties can go on sale by July 1. End quote. 4th District Supervisor Kendall Smith said the committee would bring forward its recommendations, but that it wouldn't be until after the start of the 2009 and 10 fiscal year. She said, quote, "We're only talking about $25 here. We're not talking about a lot of money." End quote. Yeah, it's only $25 per plant in a county that allows patients to grow up to 25 plants. Fortunately, patients won't be asked to voluntarily shell out $625 for 25 zip ties because the county will only sell you 6. So, for $150, patients can voluntarily protect 6 of their 25 allowed plants. But just what are these zip ties voluntarily protecting the plants from? Emerald Triangle News. Sheriff Allman said, quote, "In summary, what we're trying to do is give a very clear opportunity to people who are legitimate medical marijuana growers and give them some comfort. This will speak for them in the same way a prescription bottle speaks for itself." End quote. Medical marijuana patients in Mendocino County will be able to purchase 6 marijuana zip ties with a standard medical marijuana card or doctor's recommendation. Additional medical marijuana program zip ties will be available with a doctor's approval recommending more marijuana than the typical state-approved and Mendocino Measure B-backed 6-plant limit. The current law in Mendocino County states that a patient may currently have 25 plants. Other amendments made Monday to the county's marijuana ordinance include the addition of a $25 fee for dispensing tags to medical marijuana growers, with a half-price rate for patients on Medi-Cal and disabled veterans. The tags, zip ties with serial numbers on them, are voluntary. One supervisor said that legalization was the ultimate answer, but failing that, was throwing his support behind the program. He said, quote, "I look at it as a real protection for the medical marijuana growers. Without the zip ties, they're susceptible to losing their medicine and being subject to criminal prosecutions. I've been wrangling with this issue since 1995, and the sheriff, on his own, came up with an innovative idea. I think we ought to at least give it a chance." End quote. The $25 zip ties you have to buy from the sheriff are to protect your outdoor marijuana plants from the sheriff. Yeah, I'd say the sheriff has a pretty innovative idea there, except for the fact that the mafia came up with it centuries ago and called it a protection racket. THC shown to help patients with schizophrenia. First, they said marijuana would cause brain damage. Turns out that it actually may protect brains and stimulate nerve growth in the brain. Next, they said marijuana would cause cancer. Turns out that it actually may have anti-tumoral properties that help halt cancer. Nowadays, they like to say that smoking pot increases your risk for schizophrenia. Any bets on where I'm headed with this one? Orangeburg, New York. Daily administration of oral synthetic THC significantly improves symptoms of schizophrenia, according to the findings of an open-label case series published this month in the Journal of Clinical Psychopharmacology. Investigators at the Rockland Psychiatric Center in Orangeburg, New York, and the New York University School of Medicine administered 2.5 to 5 milligram doses of oral THC, dronabinol, for a period of 8 weeks to 6 patients diagnosed with chronic refractory schizophrenia. All of the patients enrolled in the study had reported previously using cannabis to mitigate their condition. Researchers reported, quote, 4 of the 6 patients improved to a clinically significant extent after taking dronabinol. 3 of the 6 patients had a robust response with modest to marked reductions in core psychotic symptoms. Patients 1 and 2 showed improvement within several weeks of beginning the medication, whereas patient 3 required 8 weeks to reach significant improvement. In addition, robust improvements in overall functioning was also observed, with patients 1 to 3 changing from being gravely ill to being functioning individuals able to be discharged. Patient 4 had more limited improvement in that he was calmer, cooperative, and less aggressive, but had persistence of his core psychosis. Nevertheless, his overall functioning was significantly improved. There were no clinically adverse effects, end quote. Investigators concluded, quote, these results open a possible new role for cannabinoids in the treatment of schizophrenia, end quote. Previous studies assessing the use of marijuana in patients with schizophrenia have produced mixed results. In 2007, a German study reported improved cognition in patients who used cannabis, and a 2008 Australian study found that patients diagnosed with schizophrenia report experiencing subjective relief from pot. Critics of medical cannabis use have argued that heavy marijuana use may exacerbate psychosis in patients with mental illness. However, the largest trial ever conducted comparing cannabis-using and non-using schizophrenic patients reported no statistically significant, quote, differences in symptomology between schizophrenic patients who were and were not cannabis users, end quote, after controlling for patients' age, sex, and ethnicity. El Paso Times. Juarez cartels beating 10,000 Mexican feds. Trade with Mexico via Juarez is vital to El Paso's economy, and we are close-knit with family and friends in Juarez, so many of us fear a loved one will be caught in the crossfire of bullets. Some have and died. Soldiers haven't stopped gangland-style murders, now about 7 daily right next door. And not just some soldiers, it's 7,500 soldiers plus 2,300 federal police officers. That's 9,800 law enforcers who haven't ebbed the rampant killings. There have been 130 just this month and 2,300 in the past 18 months. Drug trafficking expert Victor Clark told the Associated Press that the thousands of soldiers and federal police do little intelligence work. Not only that, but Clark notes, quote, "I see two wars, the visible and the invisible one. The visible one is the dead that are in media reports every day, but the dead are just cheap labor. The invisible one is the business class and the politicians who really benefit from the millions that the drug trade generates." End quote. It has long been suspected that profits from illegal drug trading stream into many walks of Mexican life and into politics and business. Some take the money. Some look the other way. It's a shame to say that drugs are a major part of Mexico's economy, and that can be why soldiers and police can't beat the drug cartels. In our case, nearly 10,000 can't stop gangsters in our sister city, Juarez. No amount of soldiers, police, weapons, or money can change the inviolable laws of supply and demand. The harder you try to pinch the suppliers, the more risk and scarcity you add to the supply. The higher the price, and the steeper the profits. The profits translate into six-figure monthly bribes for police and government officials who live on three-figure monthly salaries. The demand in America for marijuana and drugs is great. In the case of drugs like heroin and cocaine, the sources, opium and coca, do not grow well here. So there will always be some level of drug trafficking that will get heroin from Afghanistan and cocaine from Colombia into the United States. In the case of drugs like ecstasy and meth, the precursor ingredients and manufacturing are tightly controlled in the U.S., so there will always be some trafficking from places like China, India, and Germany with lesser controls. But in the case of marijuana, responsible for 60% to 75% of the profits of these murderous cartels, there is a foolproof way of nearly eliminating American demand for Mexican-trafficked marijuana. Let Americans grow the supply domestically. As our nation's economy tumbles and unemployment nudges toward 10%, and already over 12% here in Oregon and over in Michigan, that's 1 in 8 people who can't find work. We will not have the luxury of spending money fighting marijuana, ignoring the tax revenues we could reap from its legal sales, and forbidding new hemp farming, hemp processing, and cannabis production and retailing jobs that would be generated by the legal marijuana industry. I just hope it doesn't take months or years of 7 murders per day in Mexico, or those murders coming to American city streets, to get our politicians to see the ultimate folly of marijuana prohibition and the wisdom in legalization.
Marijuana is an addictive drug which produces in its users insanity, criminality, and death.
Marijuana is the most violence-causing drug in the history of mankind.
If the hideous monster Frankenstein came face to face with the monster of marijuana, he would drop dead from fright.
Reefer Madness.
What happens to NORML when we finally re-legalize marijuana? Commentary by Radical Russ. I was moderating the comments over at the NORML blog when I came upon this one.
Get me a plane ticket, room and board, 3 pounds of marijuana, and 100,000 accomplices. We'll go to the White House and envelop it with a cloud of pot smoke until they understand. You want nonviolent protest that will actually accomplish something? You have to make your protest too large to ignore and too large to arrest. More and more, I think of NORML as another organization that would lose its reason for being if marijuana were to be made legal, like the DEA. Don't get me wrong, you guys do a good job in pointing out the silliness, insanity, and inanity of this nation's war on marijuana users. But if pot were made legal tomorrow, what would you guys do? Get baked in the comfort of your own home? I know what I would be doing, but my job isn't contingent on the legal status of weed. Is the war on marijuana users for you what the war on terror was for Bush? A war without a goal for victory, without a truly discernible enemy, and without an exit strategy?
This is one of my favorite conspiracy theories, that we at NORML secretly want marijuana illegal so we can keep our jobs. First, NORML is thousands of dedicated, hardworking, volunteer activists nationwide in state and local chapters. I was one for 4 years before making a single dime with NORML. It's also a volunteer board of directors, a handful of volunteer interns, and 5 paid staffers who make 1/2 to 1/3 what they'd make for a similar job in the for-profit world. Personally, I'm here at NORML working twice as long for half as much because drug testing kept me out of a 6-figure consulting position. When we succeed, it won't make sense to test for pot, and I'll just go back to that career. Second, does this conspiracy theory apply to PETA? Do they secretly want KFC to debeak and scald chickens so they can have jobs? Does Greenpeace secretly want the Japanese to keep slaughtering whales so they can have jobs? Does the Family Research Council secretly hope Hollywood keeps putting boobies on TV so they can have jobs? Third, if you have the ability to organize a 100,000 person protest in Washington and the permits, porta potties, media accommodations, security, and insurance so the riot police don't shut you down, please be our guest. Somehow people think NORML can just shout, "Come protest at the Capitol!" and millions will just turn up. Look, if we could, we would. Fourth, legalization doesn't mean the end of NORML. Unlike others that focus on policy or access or drugs, we are the marijuana smokers lobby. We focus on marijuana. We're not just anti-prohibition. We're pro-marijuana. When the feds re-legalize, there will still be reluctant states. When the states re-legalize, their laws will still need tweaking. When it's completely legal, there will still be cannabis aficionados and cannabis businesses in need of a lobby. I mean, beer's legal, yet there's a beer lobby. Cigarettes are legal, and there's a hell of a tobacco lobby. NORML will just be the marijuana lobby. Fifth, these non-violent, too large to arrest protests are happening. Been to Seattle Hemp Fest, Boston Freedom Rally, Ann Arbor Hash Bash, or CU Boulder's 420 lately? These events are changing things by blowing away the public perception of marijuana's harmfulness. I interviewed 2 Seattle cops at HempFest last year, and I asked them, which would you rather work, HempFest or Quest Field at a Seahawks game? And they eagerly told me HempFest, because the drunks at Quest are belligerent jerks they often must arrest. But the stoners at HempFest, 150,000 of us, quote, don't cause any problems, end quote.
I'm a doctor.
I'm a lawyer.
I'm a journalist.
I'm a student.
I'm a teacher.
I'm a representative.
I have cancer.
The outdated laws of prohibition are more dangerous than the plant itself.
I lost my scholarship.
I was fired.
20 million arrests since 1965. This is getting ridiculous.
Our prisons are overcrowded with non-violent offenders.
We have the opportunity to change.
This is costing our country billions of dollars.
Making my family and I fight in a courtroom is difficult enough when I'm already fighting through chemotherapy.
There's no reason to be scared by tradition anymore.
We can stop this.
We can stop this.
We are the American people.
We can stop this.
And you have our support.
We're old,
young,
straight,
gay.
We're every race and nationality.
And we're not going to give up.
You can tax it.
You can regulate it.
Apply age restrictions.
You can create millions of new jobs.
We can save our economy.
President Obama?
It's time for legalization.
Legalization.
Yes.
We
can.
This has been a public service announcement.
A 1,000 million years ago, nature said let it grow. Grow more weed.
There's nothing quite like growing your own marijuana plants. From the little seedling to the vegging stage to the harvest of big sticky buds, cannabis cultivation is the most rewarding hobby a marijuana connoisseur can enjoy. So to help our listeners with their gardens, every fourth Friday of the month, we welcome High Times Magazine's senior cultivation editor, Danny Danko, to answer your questions in our normal daily audio stash, Cultivator's Corner. Well, now it's officially summertime, and we're joined once again in our Cultivator's Corner by Danny Danko, who's the senior cultivation editor for High Times Magazine. Danny, welcome back to the show.
Thanks, Russ.
We've been accepting questions from our readers here at stash@normal.org and got a couple of them here for you. Before we get started, just wanted to give you a chance to say hi to everyone, and if you've got any tips or tricks you want to relay to our audience before we get started.
Well, our latest issue our August issue has my new additions to the Seed Bank Hall of Fame, which I started a couple of years ago just to honor the companies that bring us the best genetics to be growing out. And there's an article in there also about keeping your grow room cool, which is a pretty important thing now that we're getting into the summer months. And also some stuff about clones versus seeds and a bunch of other great stuff in there as well. But yeah, definitely it's summertime now. It's going to start getting hot, so people need to start thinking about keeping their grow rooms, under 80 degrees, basically.
Under 80, okay. And I've got the magazine here in front of me too, and I really liked seeing all these articles on the seed banks and clones versus seeds. Up here in the Pacific Northwest, it seems everyone I know grows off of clones. So I was wondering if you could give us kind of a brief overview of what's the difference and why would you want to go with seeds, perhaps?
Well, the difference, a clone is basically a cutting taken from a mother plant. So the advantage of that is you know the genetics. It's guaranteed to be female as long as you've ensured that your mother plant is female. And it's basically going to be, if you take 10 clones and root them at the same time, they're all going to behave pretty much the same way with the level canopy and things that people look for. But growing from seed, which is, when the male and the female, the male pollen reaches the female flower, it'll make seeds that share the genetics of the two parents. And you also get what's called hybrid vigor, which, as long as the plants aren't, the plants are somewhat different. A sativa crossed with an indica will get you a plant that's going to grow a little bit stronger than a clone would, and it's going to behave in a way that it just somehow growing from seed just definitely gives you stronger, bigger plants when the seeds are the right hybrids.
Oh, okay. All right. And of course here in America though, coming by the seeds might be kind of difficult. These seed banks, I assume, are outside of the country.
Yeah, most of them are in countries that allow seed sales, like or at least it's a gray area in their law, like the UK and Amsterdam and even Spain now to some degree, and even Canada. And like I said, every plant does begin with a seed. Even the clones have to be from mother plants that were grown out either from, originally every plant starts with a seed. So at some point you are going to need decent genetics to get a nice mother plant, and then hopefully just take clones of that, and then that's the way you can really hold on to a strain for years and years.
Now, if you're taking clones repeatedly, off of a mother plant, you get a clone, and then from that plant, then you continue to get clones, and how long can that process go before it gets kind of weak?
Well, yeah, that's there's basically kind of a genetic drift that goes on. Some people don't really believe it, but you do see strains, especially when the mother plants have gone through certain stress type situations, and over years and years and years of cloning from a clone, a lot of times people will say that the strain sort of lost its vigor and it no longer has the smell and the potency that it did early on. So it is important to infuse genetics with new genetics. And it's also important not to just grow one strain. So, we try to make sure that people kind of, keep up with the variety,
Yeah.
And that also ensures that the strains will survive.
Yeah, and that's what we all want.
Yeah.
Now, the other article you've got in here about keeping the grow rooms cool, my first thought is to, like have my bedroom or whatever here in the summertime, I grab one of those window type air conditioner type units. Is that something that people are looking at, or fans, or does that blow too much?
Air conditioners, fans, there's even like certain misters that'll just sort of mist a cool spray that, especially if your humidity tends to go lower because of the hot temperatures. Even using CO2 because it's a frozen gas when it's released, that helps lower temperatures as well. And we've got a couple of other interesting novel things, like one grower who uses his pool water to cool his grow room, and the heat from the grow room actually warms the pool. So I thought that was pretty interesting too.
Yeah. So I was just wondering though, with like an air conditioning unit, is there any danger in getting it too close to a particular plant where it's blowing cold air right at a plant, or is there like a distance you need to be away?
Yeah, you definitely want to have it not blowing directly onto a plant, and typically you'd want to put it a little bit sort of in the middle or higher in the room and let the cold air drop.
Okay.
Because the hot air will rise.
Right. Well, let me go to.
So all your vents and everything should also be as close to the top, of the grow room, or even sometimes people will vent directly from the lights. And there's even a little story in here about water-cooled lights. So they actually use a reservoir of cold water, and that water runs over the lights, and you can put those lights a lot closer to the plants. You just have to be very careful because water and electricity are not friends.
Yeah. Well, check out the magazine, the High Times August edition's out on newsstands right now. You can also get it digitally at hightimes.com. Let me go now to the question I've got from one of our readers, Herbage actually, who is having, the battle that a lot of people have with mites, having this detail trying to kill mites and so on. And one of the solutions he's been given is this thing called acid water, where I guess it's water with a very acid base, as far as the pH scale goes. Have you heard of that as a solution? Does that work?
I have not really heard of that, and also, I would think that would do a lot of damage to the plant as well, because the plant wants the pH to be fairly balanced, if not just a little bit slightly on the acidic level. So 6.0 to 6.5 probably is ideal. And so I think giving it a bath like that, I'd much rather use a product like Einstein oil or something like that in a spray, and just a few drops in a quart of water, and maybe a drop of dish soap too, and then you just spray the whole plant, the leaves, the tops of the leaves, the underside of the leaves, the stems, even the surface of the soil, and even maybe soak the first quarter inch or half inch of soil too, because they're living in there. They're gonna, and what that does actually, it's not gonna even kill them right away. It makes them infertile, so you have to be a little patient, and it interrupts their breeding process. And after, multiple sprayings, maybe once or twice a week, you'll see the population will diminish greatly. And, that's almost the best you can hope for with mites without really going nuclear.
Wow. Birth control for mites. Interesting. You
can use that same thing works for thrips and, a number of other solutions. Any kind of, neem oil it's a good organic alternative to using something like, Roundup or something.
Yeah, we don't want that. The other solution that a lot of people are putting forth on the board here is just the good old-fashioned sticky flypaper pest strip type of thing.
Yeah, those are great for whiteflies and for gnats, but unfortunately spider mites, they don't fly, so they're just like basically trying to set up shop underneath your leaves, and they want to build webs, and basically that's their condominiums. They're sucking the juice right out of your leaves. So you definitely want to reduce their population in any way you can. You can also, there's predator mites, which you can release, and then it's kind of interesting. You can watch a little war go down between the vegetarians and the carnivores.
Also when you're setting up your room, is there any way to seal it off, or like where, I know, like I come from IT and high tech, they used to wear those big bubble suits, with the masks and the clean rooms and all that. Is there a way to set up a room like that so that
yeah, there is ways. A room should be sealed, and all the air that you bring in, if you're taking in air through an intake filter or anything, should be filtered, as fine screen so that bugs aren't being blown into your room. And every time you leave and enter, you should be aware. I mean, a lot of the growers, the most successful growers I know, actually have an outfit that they wear in their grow room that they don't take that outside. They don't even take it into the rest of their house. It's just their grow room clothing. So that they know they're not tracking bugs and funguses and things back into their grow room. And pets are an important thing too. I mean, you really shouldn't be having any pets, dogs or cats in the grow room because, the mites will travel right on them.
Yeah. And
it's harder to take pictures, so it's a little bit, you get, that cat hair or dog hair on the bugs, and we can't print that in the magazine. Our art department goes nuts trying to,
Do you get a lot of photos like that?
What's that?
Do you get a lot of photos with cat and dog hair on them?
Yeah, well, typically people, growers have a dog for, protection and companionship because it's tough out there. It's not the easiest existence. So, typically they'll have a pet and the pet's fur inevitably gets into the stickiest of places. So.
It reminds me that, it's the old Cheech and Chong line. We're smoking some Labrador, right?
Yeah.
Well, Danny, hey, we appreciate you coming here on the Daily Audio Stash. Danny Danko appears here on the fourth Friday of every month here for Cultivator's Corner. So if you got some questions on growing, grow rooms, all that kind of stuff on cultivation, hydroponics, I understand you've got an article out on hydroponics now?
Yeah, there's the Stash Awards in our September issue that's about to come out, and that's basically our rundown of the best products out there in hydroponics, nutrients, grow boxes, pretty much anything you might need. Odor control is very important. So, that's basically our kind of gear of the year article. So that's coming out in September.
All right. So again, Danny Danko from High Times Magazine, senior cultivation editor. If you've got questions, send them in to stash@normal.org and we'll ask them for the July issue of Cultivator's Corner. Thanks a lot, Danny, and we'll talk to you next month.
Thanks a lot, Russ.
Ever wonder how often to change your bong water? The most effective method for baking pot brownies? The best destinations for a ganja getaway? How to hide herb in your car? Whether to grow your own? How precisely to legalize it? Or how something as wonderful as marijuana ever got to be illegal in the first place? Finally, you can find all these answers and much more in the official High Times Pot Smoker's Handbook, featuring 420 things to do when you're stoned. Since 1974, High Times Magazine has covered marijuana in all its aspects and wonders, from cultivation to legalization to the herb's enduring and exalted place in popular culture. Packed with inside information, the official High Times Pot Smoker's Handbook rolls all of this collected wisdom together into a single indispensable ganja guide, including an entertaining look at marijuana's history, profiles of herb-friendly travel destinations and festivals, favorite potluck recipes from the High Times staff, smoking skills, advocacy and activism, essential marijuana movies and songs, profiles of famous cannabis strains, comprehensive growing information, celebrity endorsements, and much more. This is truly, finally, the ultimate guide to green living.
The battle to end adult marijuana prohibition can sometimes seem endlessly frustrating and impossible to overcome. One way we bond as a community and draw strength to continue is by rejuvenating our spirit through art and music. The Marijuana Music Awards exist to recognize those sonic artists in all genres of music who feature a ganja-friendly message to motivate and inspire all the cannabis community. Our daily Toker tunes, brought to you by MarijuanaMusicAwards.com, feature the finest in blues, rock, jazz, hip-hop, rap, reggae, country, bluegrass, and dance music to enhance that 420 feeling and refresh all you stashers for another day on the front lines of the drug war. Enjoy this cut from MarijuanaMusicAwards.com and visit our blog at stash.normal.org to learn how you can vote for your favorites and enter your Toker tunes in the 2009 Marijuana Music Awards. All right, Stashers, normally this would be where I'd introduce our daily Toker tune from MarijuanaMusicAwards.com, but I'm recording the podcast early in the morning today so that I can get out for the Mountain High camping weekend, and it's 3:45 in the morning in Australia. So I know Tam's not up and she's not going to have the post up for the It's a Wrap Friday today. So I'll play that song on Monday as a double shot with the normal Monday song. Meanwhile, I'm going to play this tune from a group called Burning Bush. It's called Honest Day's Work, and it's one of the songs we use as one of the introductions. I think it's for Government at Work Day. And I had a stasher email me asking me what the name of that song was and where he could hear it. So here you go. Here's a little bit of Burning Bush with Honest Day's Work.
Outside my door, the world is spinning faster, spinning round and round. The wheel goes up and down for me and you, and the times they beg a question: can we make it through another day? Can we make it through another day? What we do. Every day I try to do myself, 'cause everyone is everyone else. The body dies, the ego flies, the birds they sing, the creatures learn. It's an honest day's work. It's an honest day's The afternoon pollution rises high into the sky. How can we still deny the truth? The victims are so many, the winners are so few. The system serves the ones who make the rules. When everything is dying, from the forests to the seas, greed is the disease that feeds the few. Oh, but when you think about it, it's really plain to see the way it's going to be is up to me and you. Every day I try to get my soul a little further down the road. You gotta try to reach the sky, but you can only fly by digging through the dirt. It's an honest day's work. Yeah, 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 yeah. It's an honest day's work. The day is done, I watch the sun as it slowly slips away on another day of life on planet Earth. I did what I had to do and I said what I had to say. I guess I'll wait tomorrow, a little wiser than I am today. Every day I gotta keep myself, 'cause everyone is everyone else. The body dies, the ego flies, the birds they sing, the creatures learn. It's an honest day's work. Yeah, 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 yeah. It's an honest day's work. Every day I gotta get my soul a little further down the road. Gotta try to reach the sky. You can only try by digging through the dirt. It's an honest day's work. Yeah, 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 yeah. It's an honest day's work. Yeah, 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 yeah. It's an honest day's work. Yeah, 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 yeah. It's an honest day's work.
Hi, this is Alan St. Pierre, Executive Director of NORML. We are the oldest, largest, and best-known marijuana law reform organization in America, and it's all because of your support. Take some time to join NORML at www.norml.org. Your membership supports this podcast, our websites, our policy research and analysis, and our annual conferences. Changing marijuana laws is a grassroots effort, and it starts with you, the stakeholder. Join NORML today and add your voice to the millions of cannabis consumers who demand equality with our beer-drinking friends.
Legalization, decriminalization, lowest law enforcement priority, medical marijuana, ganja sacrament, consumer cannabis, industrial hemp. The world of marijuana law reform involves many different aspects of cannabis that intersect nearly every public policy discussion in America, including healthcare, the economy, global climate change, law enforcement and prisons, immigration, religion, free speech, energy policy, and war. Now we take a look at how re-legalizing marijuana will change the world in our NORML daily audio stash, Cannabis Conversations. On yesterday's stash, we began our conversation with author Ryan Grimm from the Huffington Post website. He's their senior congressional correspondent who also does a lot of reporting on the drug war. And he's got a new book out entitled This Is Your Country on Drugs, which takes a look at the history of the United States and its appetite for drug consumption. In yesterday's portion of the interview, we talked about how the American appetite for drugs throughout history is somewhat of a constant, a steady demand, which is satisfied by various drugs throughout time, some becoming more popular, some becoming less popular as various policies are applied to them. We continue now with part 2 of our interview with Ryan Grimm. Now, of course, the war on drugs has led to the mass incarceration of Americans here, where we have 5% of the world's population, but 25% of the prisoners. What do you see among crime rates? Or, I mean, I know there's probably not great statistics going back to the 1700s, but with this constant drug-taking behavior, do we see any difference in crime based on the drugs themselves, or is it purely based on the prohibitionary policies?
It's purely based on the prohibitionary policies, and there isn't great data back in the 1700s. You're right, because a lot of the times people would just be locked up for a few days. There wasn't this idea that you would commit a small crime of, say, possessing something and go to jail for 10 years. That's a very, very contemporary philosophy. But there is some fascinating data if you go back to the early 80s when the real locking up really began. Our crime rate today is less than it was then. Yet we have something like 5 times as many people in prison, which, when you think about it, is just utterly illogical. How can you have
fewer crimes committed, but more criminals. It's impossible. So what happened is that the sentences got longer, and that's the only way to explain the logical conundrum there. The same crime committed in say 1981 would get you say a 50% longer. I have all the stats in the book, but it would get you something like a 50% longer sentence if you committed that exact same crime in the mid 90s. And this was all tied into the incarceration as a solution to our problems.
What is the impact on race or ethnicity or culture with respect to these various waves of trading one drug for another or opposing one drug versus another?
Well, one of the most jarring statistics that I've ever seen came out a year or so ago, and you may remember this one, that if you are an African-American male between the ages of 18 and 34, you have a 1 in 9 chance of being in prison. Not of spending time in prison at some point between the time of 18 and 34, but currently, as you and I speak, being in prison. 1 in 9, which is just a mind-blowing figure. Now, the more you pass punitive incarceration policies, the more it's going to impact lower class and minority people, for the simple fact that our legal system, as everybody knows, is easier to manipulate if you're wealthy. That's nobody would disagree with that. If you come into court with a high-priced lawyer, you're going to do better than if you come in with a public defender or with no lawyer at all. And so the people who have no access to expensive lawyers are going to go to jail for much longer periods of time. And cops know that, so they're going to spend more time focusing on them because they know they're going to get more results out of that. And so it's just a cycle that just goes on and on and on. And one thing that a lot of people don't think about when it comes to drug policy is that prohibiting marijuana, say, has this unfortunate impact for people who, let's say you went to jail for 2 years for stealing a car. Now, you probably ended up with a 5-year or so suspended sentence after that. You come out of prison, you smoke marijuana, you go back to your parole officer, you test positive for marijuana, they throw you in for the remainder of that 5-year prison sentence, or just say they might give you one or two times of that happening, and so they give you that entire suspended sentence. Now the drug czar will tell you, well, there are only 30,000 people in prison solely for marijuana possession, and that might be true, but it doesn't get at the fact that once you have gotten into the system, then they hold everything over your head, and so that person who's now doing that 5-year suspended sentence is technically, and according to statistics, he's in there for stealing a car. But by all intents and purposes, he's actually in there because he smoked a joint.
Right. So the marijuana may not directly lead to a whole bunch of people going to prison, but for a whole bunch of people going back to prison is related to their marijuana use.
Right, and it just keeps you in the system. And there's nothing worse than being wrapped up in that system because, the Bill of Rights is completely thrown out the window. They can tell you, who you can associate with. If somebody has been convicted of a marijuana charge in the past and you've come out of prison for stealing this car, then you can't hang out with that person, and that's a violation of your parole, and you can go back in. So it just becomes this really insidious way of controlling your life, which goes completely under the radar because all the statistics will say, oh, that person's in jail for stealing a car.
Well, and looking back to these waves of different drugs too, you had mentioned how people in the 1890s, when we had that open pharmacopoeia, how people were using laudanum, for example, and then it later got banned for various temperance movements. Doesn't that have a lot to do, though, with the people that are using the drug? Like, I guess in this example, I'd say they weren't so upset when folks were using laudanum, but when the Chinese started coming in with their opium dens, then it became a problem.
That's right. The very first the very first drug law ever passed in the United States was in San Francisco, and it specified that it was directed at Chinese who were using opium. So there was no beating around the bush, the way that policies might be done today. That you have to kind of read between the lines of who they're supposed to affect. That was written right into the law that it was illegal for Chinese to use opium. It was okay for other people, but not for them. One of the arguments that I make is that speed was never really a gigantic public health problem, as far as politicians were concerned, or a criminal problem, until the counterculture started using it. You had biker gangs, and you had mothers at home. 60-70% of illegal speed was being used by women through the 30s, 40s, 50s. That was
mother's little helper, right?
Exactly. But then when the counterculture in the late 60s started using, mid to late 60s started using amphetamines, then that's when the force of the law came down on it, and it was actually amphetamines that led to the 64 the Controlled Substances Act, which ushered in our kind of modern drug policies, and that was all directed at speed, and that was only done because it was the counterculture. And of course, people have done great research on how marijuana flooded in or entered into the United States in the early 20th century during the Mexican Revolution. As people poured up from Mexico because of the turmoil, and then they banned it because of that. And the same with jazz musicians, etc. A lot of good research has been done on that. So I was trying to hit some of the trends that hadn't been covered yet.
Wow. It's a fascinating topic. The book is This Is Your Country on Drugs, The Secret History of Getting High in America. When is this book coming out, and how can our listeners get a hold of it?
It is actually available as of now on Amazon.com, or you can Google around for it and find it at independent bookstores. But it is technically, officially drops on June 29th. I'm told that they always ship it a couple weeks early, so that bookstores have it when it officially comes out. So it should be in bookstores now, but you'd have to ask for it because it's kind of in the back rooms. But June 29th is the official day that it comes out.
Okay, we'll put a link up to Amazon and other sources up on our blog at stash.normal.org. And Ryan, before I let you go, is there anything else about the book or just drug policy in general you'd like to tell our listeners?
Well, I think something that your listeners would be really interested in is a chapter I have that talks about how Reagan's war on marijuana kind of ushered in, or at least allowed, cocaine to enter into the prominence that it later took. When Reagan came in, he declared his war on drugs, and the vast percentage of his effort went against marijuana. And partly that was just his cultural hatred of hippies out in California, where he used to be the governor. And so the price of marijuana after Ronald Reagan came in just goes through the roof. And because the indoor industry wasn't like it is today, you'd have droughts after before the new harvest season. Mm-hmm. But there was never a shortage after 81 or so of cocaine. So people who would show up to their dealer, and I interviewed Keith Stroop, for instance, he'd say, in the early 80s, sometimes in the summer, I'd show up to my dealer and he wouldn't have marijuana, but he always had cocaine. And because there was no memory of what some of the negative side effects of cocaine could be, people said, well, hey, they lied to me about marijuana. Marijuana's going up in price; it's less available. I'll try cocaine instead. And so you see the price of cocaine falling at the same time that Reagan is driving the price of marijuana up, which is the exact opposite of any sane policy that you can imagine.
Certainly. All right. Well, Ryan Grimm is a writer for the Huffington Post. You can check out his work at HuffingtonPost.com. He's covering Congress and drug policy. And again, the book is This Is Your Country on Drugs, The Secret History of Getting High in America. Should drop by the 29th here, but you'll probably be able to get it sooner if you just do a little Googling. Ryan, thanks so much for talking to us here at the Normal Daily Audio Stash, and good luck with your book.
Great time. Thanks, Russ.
Thank you for downloading the Normal Daily Audio Stash, the growing truth about cannabis. We are produced by the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws in Washington, D.C. Our executive producer is Alan St. Pierre. Our deputy director is Paul Armentano. Our webmaster is Brian Judy. And web production is provided by Red Aphid Interactive Media. As always, you can catch up on the latest information about marijuana at www.norml.org. And you can interact and download from our Audio Stash blog at stash.norml.org. For everyone here at NORML, I'm your host, Radical Russ Belville, hoping all your harvests are bountiful and your encounters with law enforcement are non-existent.
We leave you today with the reminder that the Seattle Hemp Fest is coming up fast. It's the third weekend of August, just like it is every year. And I'm going to be there promoting the NORML Daily Audio Stash. I'll be speaking from the main stages, be all over the place, and I could use some help. If you're interested in volunteering to be a radical roadie, let me know by sending an email to stash@norml.org. We'll be doing things like passing out flyers to advertise the Daily Audio Stash, carrying a video camera to catch all sorts of stuff on film, recording equipment, hauling gear, and so on. And of course, as a volunteer, you'll get paid absolutely nothing. But let me tell you, the fringe benefits are nothing to sneeze at. If you can make it to Seattle, Washington, I'll be there August 15th and 16th for the Seattle Hemp Fest. Hope to see you there. And until next time, take care of each other, tokers.